You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening, or should I say good afternoon. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. I know that I'm not tuning in to you from any particularly fancy studio here. I'm actually out of a former classroom that I used to sit in as a student here at Maranatha Baptist University in Watertown, Wisconsin. The news coming in, according to President Donald Trump this afternoon: I am pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Markwayne Mullin, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security effective March 31st, 2026. He says the current Secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, he put that in parentheticals there, he says will be moving to be Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative here in the Western Hemisphere we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland. He says, serving 10 years in the United States House of Representatives and 3 of those in the Senate, 3 additional years in the Senate, Markwayne has done a tremendous job representing the wonderful people of Oklahoma, where I won all 77 out of 77 counties. You definitely know this is a Trump tweet. In 2016, 2020, and 2024. Says, a MAGA warrior and former undefeated professional MMA fighter. Just the things that Trump likes. Markwayne truly gets along well with people and knows the wisdom and courage required to advance our America First agenda. As the only Native American in the Senate, shout out to Elizabeth Warren there, Markwayne is a fantastic advocate for our incredible tribal communities. I have firsthand understanding with that. I'll get to that in a second with my only couple of interactions with Senator Mullen here in a couple of moments. He says, quote, Markwayne will work tirelessly to keep our border secure, stop migrant crime, murderers, and other criminals from illegally entering our country, and the scourge of illegal drugs, and make America safe again. Markwayne will make a spectacular Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. So some of us on the media ecosystem here have pointed out that after Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, got out in front of the American people and started doing silly things that embarrass the president. They get out in front of the American people, they get out in front of very serious situations, and they deliver results that are unflattering to the president. He doesn't care for that. The president doesn't care for that. The president of the United States expects a couple of things in this present administration. Number one, he expects that you will be loyal, not to the ego of Donald Trump. That's not what the loyalty in this case means, but through Susie Wiles, what the president expects is that you will be loyal to the mission that he has set before the American people. That's number one. Number two, the president wants you to be competent at your job. There is a reason that right now, whenever Secretary of State and Acting National Security Advisor, Chief Capital Architect, future Emperor of Venezuela, the liberator of Cuba, the downfaller of Iran, Marco Rubio, who he was once at odds with on the campaign trail in 2016. President Trump, now, when he interacts with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he stands, he points, and he applauds. Because Rubio doesn't embarrass him, and he gets it done. And that really is the last of the 3 things here. Loyal to the vision, competent, and doesn't embarrass the President of the United States. The President knows that he has until the midterms to effectuate his policy and communicate those successes to the American people. That means that you might have to have a few broken eggs to make this omelet. There are a lot of things that are in recovery. There are a lot of things that are high on the priority for what Americans expect. Americans are a people who are very deliver me the results right here, right now kind of a president. That's the kind of that's what American people desire from the president, I should say. And Secretary Noem came in and started bringing about the president's agenda through the America First Policy Institute, as well as policy suggestions from the Heritage Foundation and from the Freedom Caucus policy suggestions around the country. That trifecta of policy, kind of the anti-Cato in border security, delivered by border czar Tom Homan, made the country safer. It removed immigration and the influx crisis at the border from the top of Americans' voting priorities, things they were concerned about because it was taken care of. Then Kristi Noem decided she was going to take a victory lap early. And I want to make this clear. I have pointed out consistently on the show, our audience has pointed this out consistently on the show, Kristi Noem wanted to go out and play podium Barbie. Now, I've already received a couple of criticisms here, there, and everywhere saying, well, that's very sexist, Tony. That's very mean. That means you hate all women in the administration. No, we're going to get to that in a minute. However, regarding Kristi Noem's personality here right up front, she got on the cowboy hats, got a nice Stetson, and then went down and did a little photo tour of the El Salvador Secot prison, and then came back and did another kind of Kylie Jenner handing a Pepsi to the police 2020 riot style photo shoot out there with the DHS, getting the souped up super ultra tactical AR-15 photo shoot. And a lot of people on the Republican side of the aisle pinched the bridges of their nose and sighed in exasperation, because the way that Donald Trump really likes things, he'll do the victory lap running, you do the job, because that's what he hired you for. You want all of the praise and the credit, Trump will do, as he has spent hours and hours and hours, make it clear, hours and hours and hours at these cabinet meetings praising the certain things that his cabinet officials can do. Now, there are a lot of other people who are saying, oh, she didn't get demoted or fired or removed, she got a promotion. Oh, she's now the special envoy to the Shield of the Americas. No. President Trump did not like what Mike Waltz was doing as the national security advisor, so he put him somewhere. Again, this is good management and good leadership. He is now putting him somewhere as ambassador to the United Nations where he can be more effective. Kristi Noem knows next to nothing about law enforcement. She was an excellent administrative governor. She was great. I'd say that she was even more an effective governor than her neighboring Dakota's governor, Doug Burgum, in some ways when it comes to the administration of certain state agencies. But when it comes to manning the largest law enforcement operation other than the Department of Justice itself, Kristi Noem did not have what it took. She didn't. Instead, she surrounded herself with people like Corey Lewandowski, who, according to our own Daily Signal reporters, shuffled into the office and slammed the door really quickly because he didn't want to be seen by media, because his affair is a scandal. It's embarrassing to the American people, and it's embarrassing to President Trump. It is also embarrassing whenever you have a cabinet official that goes into office, and then when they get in front of Congress, Marco Rubio, he doesn't rise to the occasion. Marco Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Linda McMahon, Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, although the press secretary is a totally different administrative role than everyone else. Secretary Brooke Rollins, when they sit in front of Congress, they don't rise to the occasion, they don't get in there, they don't take off the earrings, take off the rings and get into a fight, because that's what the congressionals are there doing in front of C-SPAN 1, 2, or 3. But Kristi Noem, she'd get in there and there'd be a little bit of the old mixing it up a little bit here. Case in point, you have Representative of Raskin, Jamie Raskin, who's a sleazeball, getting in with essentially a smear campaign rant, he says, about Kristi Noem's response to the shooting of Renee Good. And this was a moment that showcases something that, while I believe, based on the evidence, the Department of Homeland Security did the right thing, I believe that in this instance, it didn't make Noem look good. It does not make Noem look good. Here's that awful moment from this week on Capitol Hill that, again, gives Jamie Raskin free points, which is unnecessary.
Renee Good was a 37-year-old poet, about 20 years younger than you are now, and like you, both a devout Christian and the mother of 3.
Who left those 3 so then she could go obstruct federal law enforcement. Again, the angelizing of Renee Good here is inappropriate. But again, one of the people who is responsible for the angelizing is Kristi Noem, who came out immediately before there was any investigation, before there was anything serious at all that we had as far as the look over of the evidence, and declared immediately judge, jury, and executioner over that case. It was a huge mistake. It was unnecessary. And Trump did not like it.
She was on her way home from school drop-off when she encountered an ICE operation, and one of your agents shot her dead, shot her 3 times. She bled out in the driver's seat of her car after your agents refused to let a doctor or EMTs approach her. You expressed no sympathy for her family and no regret for her killing by an ICE agent. You ran a smear campaign against Renee Good. You called her a domestic terrorist. Alex Preddy was also 37 and, like you, a federal worker. He was an ICU nurse at a VA hospital, outstanding in his job, providing comfort to many of our vets in their final hours. He was standing on a street corner filming your agents as they roughed up peaceful protesters. Americans have a First Amendment right to record government agents in public places, as 8 different federal circuit courts have unanimously found.
Okay, so the entirety of Raskin's testimony here is unnecessary. It's unnecessary, it's told dishonestly, but unfortunately, because, and this is kind of the beginning of the end situation here for Kristi Noem building this out, when Kristi Noem got out in front of the public, as she did with Renee Good, as she did with Alex Preddy, as she has done multiple times in multiple cases, and gets out in front of the press conference and the podium, and the questions start flying in, and it's Secretary Noem, what happened here? What happened here? What's going on? How is this happening? How is that happening? And Kristi Noem responded, well, I know everything that happened. Here's what's clear. Instead of saying, I stand behind law enforcement and we're going to wait for an investigation. That's what Tom Homan did. That's what others have done in that particular instance. And then still carrying out what I would argue to be a fairly good and strong, a prescient and appropriate response. She would get out there and declare that she knew everything that was happening right then and there. And everyone in the room who was on her staff pinched the bridge of their nose and sighed, because now you have to get out there and defend this. There is no greater, and I mean no greater issue for Noem. This is what really levied the problem here. This was the beginning of the end. When Secretary Kristi Noem was asked by Senator Kennedy, hey, what about this $220 million media budget for the Department of Homeland Security, which features you prominently? This is, again, Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, the man who, good friend of the show, good friend in general, who doesn't futz around his words, that old Southern gospel charm when it comes to smacking opponents. Kristi Noem makes one claim here that is the ultimate no-no when it comes to President Trump. Here was that exchange.
How do you square that concern for waste, which I share, with the fact that you have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently?
Sir, the president tasked me with getting the message out to the country and to other countries where we were seeing the invasion come from, with putting commercials out that told them that if they were in this country illegally, that they needed to leave, or we would detain them and remove them, and they'd not get the chance to come back to America the right way. That has been extremely effective.
Ask you to run these advertisements?
Here it is. Here's the problem. Regardless of not whether again, I see a lot of people over in the comments section who I understand saying, no, nothing's wrong, she got promoted. Don't do this. There is a key problem right here, right now. She takes her foot, she raises it up. Kennedy says, did Trump sign off on the ad? Did you hear President Trump say, $200 million ad for DHS, Kristi Noem, cowboy hat, I like it, do it, sign it off. He's asking him, he's giving her the chance. Did he sign off? This is quite literally Tom Cruise going, did you order the code red? This is the moment. Not even a question of legality. It's look, $200 million on an ad campaign. Explain yourself. You made a lot of your after the initial border was locked down, excellent job. Kristi Noem and staff, excellent job. Then you moved on to the initial ICE deployments, excellent job, Kristi Noem and staff. Oh, then you started locking down all of the numbers and not releasing any of the deportation numbers, as Mike Howell over at the Oversight Project walked through us here on the air. Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security is the very first Homeland Security administration to lock away the deportation numbers. So Kennedy's asking her here now, hey, well, this ad, did Trump do it? Her foot is hovering over the dog doo-doo. Here's a response.
Right.
We had that conversation, yes, before I was put in this position and sworn in and confirmed, and since then as well.
Okay. Did you bid out those service contracts?
Yes, they did. They went out to a competitive bid, and career officials at the department chose who would do those advertising commercials.
And the people that you ended up picking were people who had formerly done your political work back in South Dakota. Is that right?
No, that's not correct, sir.
I think it is.
No, it's not, sir.
It is, by the way. It is. And by the way, this happens. This does happen, by the way. So the idea, so I've had this conversation with, I truly do not know how many politicians at this point. They have somebody that did political campaign work for them. Let's say, God forbid, I decide to run for the state legislature. I don't know why I would do that, but I do. And so, next election cycle comes around, 2028, all of a sudden, presto, I'm Tony Kinnett, state senator, replacing Michael Kreider in my district. Yippee, super duper, all of the cheering and crying. Then after that, I decide to run for the Indiana governor again. I don't know why I would do that for myself. After I become the governor of Indiana, and I'm currently burning Gary with, fire and iron and blood and all the good stuff, I then decide I'm going to do a campaign to talk about what we're going to turn Gary into. And then I hire, after some bidding, the person who just so happened to run my PR campaign when I was running for state senate. There would be a lot of eyebrows that would raise about 1.5 inches on the forehead. Now, if you have an incredibly massive forehead like Cory Booker, it's got a lot of room to raise there. But to be fair, there are some questions that should be asked. Now, the answer is, by the way, if you want the answer politically is, yes, I've worked with them before. They did good work. I saw the value brought to the table by the others in the bid. I did not think the value was enough for the goods and services that I had already had personal experience seen carried through. You may claim that's nepotism. I claim it's experience with good contractors. To be fair, some of the staff that are on my Tony Kinnett cast staff have worked with me for years, some close to a decade now. Producer Lou and producer Daniel and I worked together at Chalkboard Review and then back at Lone Conservative. They're stellar guys. They're on my staff because I trust them. That's not a sin. Lying about it and saying, oh, no, they were all independently vetted and 4 out of 5 dentists told me that I should go with them and also to use Colgate. That ain't going to fly. But that's not the biggest sin here. It's, did you talk with President Trump? Again, she's under oath. Did you talk with President Trump about this $220 million ad campaign?
The individuals who, I believe the careers who they chose were 2 different media firms. There's been conversation about their subcontractors, but we have no legal authority to look into subcontractors on work like that.
Okay. And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time?
There it is. Foot hovering over the dog doo-doo. This is it. It's not about the money. Could be $5, could be $5 billion. Doesn't matter. He is giving her the chance. Did Trump approve it? Because if Trump approved it, it's his administration. It's his. He can approve a $200-some million. The comments have pointed out this is peanuts compared to some of the campaigns that were spent, for example, via USAID. If Trump believes, I think $200 million to communicate our victories to American people is importante, then good, great, grand, excellent, super duper, alley-ooper, wonderful. But if it's her decision, now the calculus changes. So her foot is hovering right over the doggy doo-doo here.
My understanding.
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt.
She's trying to wiggle.
The president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes.
Whenever you hear a Baptist lower their voice, lean into the microphone and go, I'm going to give you one last chance. Now you tell me right here, right now, that you didn't then give your money to them willy liver goobers over there. You tell me right to my face. When my dad leaned forward to me and said things quietly, I tell you what, my heart found the Lord real quick in a hustle hurry. Real quick. Any Baptist preacher, any Pentecostal preacher, heck, even get a Methodist preacher out of Missouri. He'll get out there, and you can get him ranting and raving, yelling, screaming, running the aisles, that kind of a thing. That's normal, that's fine. The passion comes naturally to some of us Midwestern and Southern folk. But when you get real quiet and you lean into the microphone, It's serious business, guys.
Sir, we went through the legal processes, did it
Did the
correctly,
president
worked
know
with
you were gonna do
OMB.
this?
Yes,
He did?
yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been.
Here we go. See, the question was, did Trump order it? She said, we went through the legal process. Not what I asked. Did Trump order it? Yes, he did. We went through the blah, blah, blah. And also, may I say that the program was a huge, smashing success. It was wonderful. Children dancing in the streets. It was amazing. I surged after that. Great, whatever. Not the question. Did you do it correctly? And the answer is no. The answer is no. Now, according to Bill Mulligan over at Fox, some of the inside conversations made manifest, this was the breaking point for Trump. Again, ignore all of those saying, oh, she's appointed to another great position. All right, cool, that's great. Before we get there, want to know what upset Trump? Putting words in his mouth. A friend of mine over on X, Oilfield Rando is his account. He makes this clear. This is a classic rule. Don't put words in Trump's mouth. You're not Trump. You're not the president. Don't do this.
Martha, had been brewing for a couple months. It started in Minneapolis with all of the bad headlines that were coming out there every day. It escalated when Secretary Noem went on TV and called Alex Preddy and Renee Good domestic terrorists. It escalated further when Tom Homan was brought in to essentially be the shot caller there, and Noem and Greg Bovino were essentially sidelined. But then it hit a snowball effect this week with her testimony here on the Hill. And we just got some clarity as to what happened with Senator John Kennedy and Noem and the White House earlier this week. Senator Kennedy just gaggled with reporters here at the Hill a short time ago, and he gave us a bigger picture look at this. So he said ahead of that hearing, he had heard about this $200 million ad buy that DHS and Secretary Noem did. Of course, we've seen the ads where she's on horseback and she's featured heavily. There were some allegations that maybe there was some cronyism in those contracts. So Senator Kennedy said that he was offended by the size and scope of that contract. So he called up the White House and he said, we've got Noem on the Hill tomorrow. I would like to press her under oath and ask her about this contract. And he said the White House essentially didn't oppose it, said go ahead. So then we see that hearing on Tuesday where he pressed her about the contract directly, and he asked her repeatedly, did President Trump personally approve of this contract to spend $200 million on this ad contract? And Kristi Noem replied under oath that yes, he did. Well, President Trump is
now, folks, guys, boys, girls, squirrels. You don't do that. You don't put words in Trump's mouth. Now, this is an issue. Again, you stay loyal to the plan. You stick to the plan. You let him cook. Number two, you are straight with your competence, right? You do the job. You set out to do it. It's good. All things, all the time. The short amount of time on the books means it's now or never. And number three, don't embarrass the president. Don't you know that rule around the house? Don't embarrass mama. Don't embarrass the president. Do not go out there and embarrass the president. Even if you disagree, Vice President J.D. Vance is a flawless example of this. He disagrees, occasionally it appears, with some of the foreign policy decisions from the President of the United States. But what does he do? He goes out there and says, this administration, the president believes this, the American people have chosen this. You don't ever hear Vance going, well, I think this, that, and the other. Nope. And it's a smart move. It's not your administration. It's the president's administration. That's how executive branches work, folks. That's just the way. You don't want the administration to work like that? Congress needs to take back power and make the executive agency less important, but they're not doing that. So right now, we have a congressionally checked, as awful as this is going to sound to everybody, essentially a presidential republic in which the executive holds a bit of outsized power in the delegation to the confirmed through the Senate agencies in their heads. Now, he's replacing him with Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma, or he's replacing Kristi Noem with Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma. Now, it's a smart political move because Oklahoma is going to be a Simply Safe, not sponsored by Simply Safe, by the way, simply a safe district for Republicans to appoint someone different in the meantime. Now, my team is reporting to me that the replacement set for so far for Senator Markwayne Mullin appears to be one of the representatives is going to be appointed and then a special election held. We're going to get some more information on that here in just a couple of minutes. Chuck Schumer has now run out to the press, and he's trying to take a victory lap, but he can't do that because while he said that it's Donald Trump and Kristi Noem that's the issue, and that's why the Department of Homeland Security is shut down, now he's saying, well, Kristi Noem was actually not the problem in the first place. Bizarre stuff from Chuck Schumer. Here you go.
The president has fired Kristi Noem. Good riddance. But the problems at this agency, ICE, transcend any one person. The rot is deep. The president has to end the violence and rein in ICE.
What would you need to confirm Senator Mullen to this position? Do you need assurances on immigration?
This is a problem of policy, not personnel. The rot is
LOL. Hilarious. No. It's an issue of personnel. Now, Chuck Schumer not understanding this is really hilarious. It's truly hilarious because they are currently colleagues. He's a colleague with Senator Markwayne Mullin. And so if he goes out there and says, I think he's a Nazi and he's terrible and he's evil, then the next question is, well, then why haven't you been saying that up until now? Chuckles. Well, the only person in Washington, D.C. who has a lower approval rating than Chuck Schumer, I mean, at this point, might be George Santos out of New York, who's not even there anymore, maybe? So Schumer trying to kind of flip this around, it's not effective. It's not going to do anything. I really doubt that this is going to be effective. Senator Markwayne Mullin has released a statement. He has said, look, yes, I'm a Republican. Yes, I'm a conservative. I'm here to enforce the policies that Congress passed. My focus is to keep the homeland secure. That is going to be my focus. That was a statement to ABC News. Now, we're going to get into a conversation on Pam Bondi in a minute. There are indications from inside the administration. This is to me. So I want to make this clear here that right now, Attorney General Pam Bondi is on thin ice. She's on thin ice. I don't know if President Trump is going to can her by the end of the day. I don't know if President Trump might can her by the end of the week. All I am telling you is that according to several administration officials, not just to me, but several other individuals, friends of mine inside kind of the media ecosystem, Bondi is very, very, very much next. She has not performed satisfactorily. And when going into committee, gets into a lot of these tit-for-tat, squibble-squabble fights that are not what the President of the United States considers to be useful. Being loud is not a virtue. I know, my wife tells me that all the time. Now, this brings up the sexism question. Oh, how can you say that, like, Kristi Noem is podium Barbie? How can you say that? That's so mean. Don't you like women in power? What's the problem with you? Okay, I am on the record all the way back into January saying very clearly, and when I mean January of 2025, that this administration is going to rely on competent February of 2025 with the first Epstein file binder debacle that was a nightmare, or Bondi getting out and giving some ill-timed and inopportune statements on certain political ventures or prosecutions, or of course, Secretary Noem, as you just heard Bill Mulligan report over on Fox News, that the issues were consistently she would get up to the podium and she would say dumb things or communicate a good policy poorly. It's a problem. And I made the case that what the President of the United States what the President of the United States wants is what a lot of Americans want. They want the cool, calm airline pilot that everyone knows they want whenever you get on a plane. You want the cool, calm, competent airline pilot to tell you where the plane is going, what it's going to do, where you're going to land, what's going on, and then to have a smooth flight. American people don't want equity hires. There has been this long-running idea in the Republican Party that because women are a big vote, you got to get women in there. This is why Mitt Romney and the whole binders full of women thing was kind of a mess. And the Democrats are very open about it. I'm going to appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court of heaven. Being Joe Biden, a mouth half full of Rocky Road ice cream and dementia, making it clear that, yeah, he doesn't mind. He'll appoint whatever gender and color needs to fit the quota. That's why Pete Buttigieg, who likes trains, was made the Secretary of Transportation. There was no reason to appoint Kristi Noem to the administration other than before, as a governor, she was popular and a potential rival. She was. I recall all of the trends between 2020 and 2024. The evidence is still very clear and very much out there. So right now, here and now, the President of the United States is getting rid of the incompetence. Now, I'm going to level with you. There are a lot of women inside the Trump administration who are quieter and more serious and are getting work done. You see, Secretary Linda McMahon, who of all people, being the wife of Vince McMahon, former WEF stuff, big entertainment value, big camera stuff. You think that she'd be doing camera stuff all the time? Nope. She sat down with our Daily Signal White House correspondent, Elizabeth Mitchell, in the last month. Quiet, simple, serious interview. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going. The president's policies, good for American people. Presto, the end. Secretary Brooke Rollins, who's not afraid to get out there and mix it up a little bit, but does so in a dignified fashion. Secretary Brooke Rollins' team invited me, transparently here, to a press conference regarding cattle ranchers who were given back their land and a federal lawsuit dropped because Biden's administration was so outraged that a ranching family in the Dakotas would dare allow their cattle to graze within a mile of the sacred Hoobity-Doobity tribe's precious grasslands. And Rollins passionately, competently, normally said, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, this administration, the American people, results excellent. Awesome. Secretary Rollins does not embarrass the president. Linda McMahon does not embarrass the president. Now you may say, what about White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt? Doesn't she get out there and mix it up with the press? Doesn't she get out there and make bold statements? Yes, that's her job. That's her job. The press secretary is meant to be, well, the vice president is technically supposed to be the first press secretary. Just, for all intents and purposes, the vice president goes out and says, yes, the president and all of us were doing great things. That's why Biden, to try to save face, made Kamala the border czar, only it was a huge failure. And that's because a lot of Americans were concerned about fraud. President Trump has made Vice President Vance the task force head on fighting fraud, along with, for example, Dr. Oz. But Carolyn Leavitt doesn't embarrass herself in front of the press either. She doesn't get out and make a bunch of statements. She reads and delivers what the administration, what Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff, what Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and the President of the United States himself, Donald John Trump, wants her to say. That is effective, that is wise, that is intelligent. You can have energy, you can get out there, you can do good things. I don't see Carolyn Leavitt launching big ad campaigns that are focused on Carolyn Leavitt. Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, doesn't get herself into these particular issues. She's very competent, right to the point, what American people need. I believe that Secretary Markwayne Mullin has the opportunity here to show what good, calm, effective leadership looks like. He is a sacrificial spot in the Senate. He can be replaced very easily. And Trump is giving Kristi Noem a very, very kind send-off here. He did the same with Mike Waltz, by the way. He says, I am appointing them to a separate position. Now, he is appointing her as the special envoy to the Shield of the Americas. So what's the Shield of the Americas thing? What's this? The Shield of the Americas is a new Western Hemisphere security initiative, which was announced by the President Trump on March 5th, 2026, which is aimed at doing what? It's the Monroe Doctrine. That's it. The Western Hemisphere. Trump has appointed her, essentially, the special envoy to the Monroe Doctrine, aimed at using U.S. military and intelligence resources to combat cartels, drug trafficking, and transnational criminal organizations across Latin America. And you can tell this is very Trump, at a scale not seen since the Cold War. Trump is hosting a SHIELD summit with leaders from 11 Latin American nations at his Doral, Florida golf resort to launch the effort. Now, very, very important. Capitalizes on successes that Kristi Noem had as the Secretary of Homeland Security. Excellent. Is this a promotion? No, it's a reshifting. It's an out for her. It's a very gracious out. Don't take from the President of the United States that he is clearly being gracious and cunning when he's being gracious and cunning by saying, actually, it's a promotion because she's done such a super duper wonderful job. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have to do that. He's being tactful. The president is pragmatic. He is politically. That's what he does. It's a good thing. And if he gets rid of Bondi, because she promised, again, when Dan Bongino, who I love, good friend, when Kash Patel, who I've met once, when Pam Bondi said, oh, there's all this stuff, we promise it's there, it's right there, we're gonna get in there, we're gonna do all these incredible things, and they overpromised and they underdelivered, that makes Trump look bad. He doesn't like that. His administration doesn't have time for this. Maybe Bondi turns some of these things around. Maybe she's not out. I'm telling you that right now on the inside of the administration, it does not look good. Now, I'm not gonna stand on that too much because you guys know how much I really don't like reporting sources from inside the administration that I'm not giving you the name of. I don't really enjoy doing that. So whenever I do say something like that, I try to keep it as minimal as possible. Now, from the Daily Signal side of things, because I am very, very proud of my team for covering this over at the Daily Signal. There's a couple of other things here that are interesting from the President of the United States. First of all, the President of the United States is completely done with Tucker Carlson. He's done with it. In a lengthy conversation just now, President Trump hit back at Tucker, as according to Jonathan Karl, over on ABC News. But this is an interview the President chose to do with Jonathan Karl. Carlson, who had called the Iran war absolutely disgusting and evil. Tucker has lost his way, Trump told me. I knew that a long time ago, and he's not MAGA. MAGA is saving our country. MAGA is making our country great again. MAGA is America first, and Tucker is none of those things. That is very correct and true. When you are simping and shilling for Qatar, which persecutes Christians, and the Islamic countries, which persecute Christians, inside of the United States, and by the way, this administration, who, I'm going to level with you, has done more for Nigerian Christians and also Christians here at home with anti-Christian anti-discriminatory actions against Christian measures. Again, Harmeet Dillon has done a phenomenal job at heading this up. Pam Bondi has done a pretty decent job at putting a lot of these focuses in. Tucker has mocked those things. The president's done with this kind of nonsense, done playing these games. I mean, when even Qatar is slapping you at this, kind of stuff, going to make that case. Now, there are people saying, Bondi's going to be out and Judge Jeanine Pirro is going to be in. I'm not going to speculate on who I would even want to see as an attorney general. I'm telling you guys, the age of needing to equity appoint women, that's a greater insult to women, and I'm glad that age is starting to be over. Well, you got to have a woman vice president because it softens your image. Stop it. Black people don't like being pandered to. Women don't like being pandered to. Hispanic people don't like being pandered to. The reason that Hispanic people in this country support the President of the United States is not because he appointed Secretary Marco Rubio. Oh man, they're looking at Trump, he's putting in Hispanic people, let's go. That's not why people like the president when it comes to his policies on Cuba and Latin America. They like the president because of his policies towards Cuba and Latin America. Not because of the equity purchases and hires that he's put in. The reason that women on the right support Trump is not because Kristi Noem looks great in a Stetson and jeans. No, because they like what the president is doing. This is supposed to be Trump's thing. Remember when Trump chose J.D. Vance? Remember the mewling and the whining? Oh, he didn't choose the minority. Oh, he's going to lose the election. He didn't choose a skirt and someone with skin of this color in this background. Oh, we've got to be really calculating. What state is the president going to win? Oh, he's picked the senator from Ohio. That's not going to help him out very much. And it mattered nothing. Nothing at all. Good move from the president of the United States here. So to be clear, when Condi Rice was brought into the Bush administration, she was effective. Brooke Rollins, Linda McMahon, very, very effective. Carolyn Leavitt in her position, very, very effective. Character, merit, skills, ability. Now, personally, I would have expected the president to put someone forward for nomination who was a veteran in law enforcement. Now, I'm going to level with you here, just to be transparent, as we try to do on the Tony Kinnett cast, as I'm sitting here at Maranatha Baptist University with the TV screen behind me, going live hours before I normally would, in the middle of a conference, because breaking news happens right now. Don't even get me, Trump just announced that there's about to be an operation in Cuba. One regime toppled per month. We're going to get to that. I want to make this clear, though, right before we get here on a transparent level. I maybe would have suspected perhaps Jim Banks, veteran, maybe to head up Homeland Security. I'm not sure what the background conversation was. All I know is this. Trump selected Mullen. Mullen said yes. Now we are moving into this acting process. I don't know what the envoy to the Shield of the Americas thing is going to fully entail. No one does yet. What I know so far is that Trump is trying to get things to appear and to function as normal. Oh, 11177 points out in the comment section. Tulsi Gabbard, also great. Yep, Tulsi Gabbard comes out, serious, doesn't get in big, well, I set fights in the committee. Nope, never see that from her. It's straight, it's to the point. She has a bit of a venomous edge to her. Excellent military career, perfect. Good move. Great example, excellent kind of work. Now, that stuff aside, I do want to point out one other thing finally here because I mentioned tribal stuff. So as a member of the Cherokee tribe, with my little own BIA card and everything, I've spoken with Senator Markwayne Mullin about this before because the era of just giving out eternal handouts and treating Native Americans in this country like a special kind of crippled individual who needs a bunch of handicap materials. It's not an insult to those who are handicapped, by the way, to be clear. It's that, you know, if someone's in a wheelchair, it's not like they're going to get out and start walking up the steps unless they're one of the left-wing protesters at a No Kings rally. But in the context, Native Americans in this country, by Democrat administrations and the tribal authorities specifically, are treated this way. Oh, you can't expect a member of this tribe to just go out and get a job and live without a bunch of extra stuff. That's, you know, they could never do it on their own. Markwayne Mullin is very much against that kind of just eternal handout program, and I appreciate that about him. I've spoken to him about that directly before, and he also recognizes those that were left in Kentucky, for example, through the March of the Trail of Tears. He recognizes the civilized tribes, for example, that isn't a curse word in his mouth. That's just something, you know, small that I appreciate. You know, so on that side of things, I do want to move on to some of the other conversation here about an announcement from the President of the United States on an operation potentially next week in Cuba. Oh boy. So, according to the Trump administration, the President of the United States has now announced that next week there could be some kind of operation happening regarding communist Cuba, which is currently experiencing blackouts. The current El Presidente, who is just a stand-in for the the Castro's kin, I should say. He's very, very nervous. He got out after the Venezuela stuff and said, I am ready to talk to Donald Trump, ready to talk. I'm ready to speak to him. I bet you are. Here's the president alluding to a potential Cuban operation here in press today.
All of a sudden, you see, where's Marco? He's not around anymore. I don't see him. He's doing some job, and your next one is going to be, we want to do that special Cuba. He's waiting, but he says, let's get this one finished first. We could do them all at the same time, but bad things happen. If you watch countries over the years, you do them all too fast, bad things happen. We're not going to let anything bad happen to this country. Also with us are Attorney General.
Hey, let's go. I mean, just one administration. They told you Venezuela was going to be forever. We were going to be in there. There are a lot of people right now. I was on a radio hit this afternoon, really nice guy, but who said, well, people said going into Iran, this was going to be a 4 or 5 day operation. And here we are 4 or 5 days in. Who said that? Who said it was going to be 4 or 5 days? Show me the prediction out there that gave a timeline. At the same time, I'm also not seeing the eternal operation. From the President of the United States, right clear, one would assume, as soon as very likely the Kurds balkanize and carve out a big chunk of Western Iran, which is what they're going to do, just to level with you. I have my piece in the Daily Wire is out on this, in the Daily Wire opinion section, on who the groups are that are going to come in. Because now Russia and China and Turkey are likely going to try to prop up something. They have 3 problems with that. Number one, Azerbaijan to the north of Iran, is not quite gone, and they are not morons, and they do not believe that, you know, Turkey's Erdogan getting out there and pumping a bunch of weapons into some communist group, the MEK, whose leader is hiding in Albania, it is right for Iran, and some kind of collaborationist government where the regime says, if you let us stay in power and don't hang us all from cranes like we did to everybody, then we'll totally moderate. That's who Russia, China, and Turkey are going to try to run guns to. I doubt it's going to be as effective here. I think the Kurds, once they do finally begin their invasion, are going to make significant progress. Iran, by the way, is already effectively over because the official orders from Ayatollah Temporary and the senior well, I should say the junior made senior military leadership is every providence, you're on your own. Yo-yo. Everybody. Local defense, whatever Wolverines is in Persian, like screaming that out in Farsi, that's the current mood. Which means that if the Kurds start moving in Western Iran, ain't nobody coming to help them. I don't know if you guys know this, but if the B-2's favorite snack is cheap Chinese infrastructure, the MQ-9 Reaper drone's favorite snack is an open-air convoy. Deuce and a half trucks. By all means, Iran, please try to reinforce the western portions of your country with open troops. They won't get there. So it's very likely the Kurds, who have been screwed over by every administration ever, the greatest pox, foreign policy-wise, on the names of Bush and Obama, will forever be the betrayal of the Kurds. Of course, the betrayal of the Americans and the allowing of the compassionate conservatism to screw over the Kurds by setting up the nation building in Iraq, instead of just telling the Kurds, all right, you take it, we've killed Saddam Hussein, there you go, keys, enjoy, which is what should have happened. The Trump administration appears to actually be doing the right thing. It's wild, by the way. How many times in the last 2 years the President of the United States has just taken decisions that have come before him that Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton, Bush 1 made those mistakes, and Trump's just like, I'm going to do the right thing instead, and I'm going to flip off whoever tells me otherwise. It's really incredible how many times he's doing this. He's better at international negotiation along economic lines than Bill Clinton. He's better at individual troop, essentially, he's better at blowing regimes up. He's better at dealing with Venezuela than Bush dealt with Panama. He's better at dealing with Iraq than Bush is, especially with regard to ISIS and now here with Iran. He's better at everything than Obama. I mean, it's really quite incredible to behold. Just to be incredibly clear here. So right now, what you're seeing is Miguel Diaz-Canel. He's been the president of Cuba since October 10th of 2019. He's just a puppet. I do enjoy the fact that he is truly terrified of the United States. Now, I'm going to level with you. There are a lot of people who think that Cuba should be called like Cuba Libre and it should be an independent country and revolution. That's not my opinion. I think that Cuba and its people should be brought in as a non-voting territory to the United States, and the people of Cuba should be given a little bit of a tax write-off to go home and set their new United States non-voting territory to rights. Teddy Roosevelt did a phenomenal job of taking Cuba, and I'm sorry, as a Teddy Rooseveltian in my foreign policy, the American empire is a good thing. And there's an interview that I've often referenced on this show after the fall of the Soviet Union, in which Gorbachev laughed. One of the only times we've ever actually seen Gorbachev laughing, really, not in the Pizza Hut commercial, but on camera. They said, what was one of those effective pieces of propaganda that the Soviets actually got to take hold of? Because we had the Red Scare here in the United States. And he said, oh, without a doubt, it was telling the Americans that they were imperialist and that their imperialism was evil. I was like, that's clearly the best thing the Soviets ever did was convince the world that Americans owning territory was terrible. Even though life expectancy, basically we did imperialism far better than the Brits ever did. You're like, Tony, that's not very politically correct. Oh, shocker, I don't care. So, yeah, other comments, coming in, I agree with Cherubi here. The El Salvador trip did look like bad optics. Yeah, I agree. Matt Gaetz to replace Pam Bondi. Slit my wrists and dip me in burning oil. No, we do not need the man who solicited sex from a 17-year-old in exchange for braces to be the next Attorney General. I don't need a man who laughs like Tucker Carlson and believes the same kind of consistently wrong every time stuff that Matt Gaetz believes to be the next Attorney General. How about no? How about somebody who is really good at their job? Huh? What about that? What about an Attorney General that's like really, really successful and doesn't overpromise? I don't want an Attorney General to promise me the moon. I don't want an Attorney General that tells me that they're gonna do all of this wonderful stuff for me and it's gonna be great and magical and unicorn tears are gonna bring us the future. I want an Attorney General to do their job and be quiet. I want them to do the job and I want them to be successful. That's what I want. That's what Americans want out of an Attorney General. We need more showboats. We don't want more people setting themselves up for that. You want to be a pundit? Go be a pundit. Go start a show. Seriously. The idea that you have politicians that are running to be the anchors on C-SPAN, by that I mean, doing committee nonsense and tricks. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I simply don't believe that. So now that side, I did want to ask, what experience does Mark have in law enforcement? He does not. That's why I said I was surprised that the President of the United States had not chosen one of the Senate, probably like Jim Banks, for example, who obviously served in the military. But again, one of the big benefits for Trump here is that Mullen is competent. You know what I'm going to pull up here? I'm going to pull up his complete and total committee list. Markwayne Mullin has served on the Appropriations Committees, Armed Services, Health and Labor, Education, Labor and Pensions, Health and Indian Affairs. It's an interesting choice. I see the Armed Services situation here. I'm not seeing law enforcement. And again, not assigning that, I still think that would have been better. Now, like we've seen with Pete Hegseth, obviously, no, I don't believe that Markwayne Mullin is a former military member at all. He's a former business owner, which is good. Competent administration is very, very important. But I don't believe that particular side of things. From one comment, so Tony, I am wrong, proof it then. I have no idea what you're talking about. But we will take a couple of mail questions. Why do you think the president didn't think she could hold up under pressure? I mean, the reason that the President Trump chose Kristi Noem is that she was a prominent conservative leader as a governor out of 2020. And that she did a pretty decent job of avoiding a lot of the mistakes that some governors made, like Eric Holcomb of Indiana, for example, through COVID. And that was a mark of good service. It was a mark of how popular governors were that didn't totally screw up the woke stuff and the COVID stuff. Do you remember? I mean, this is what made a lot of people saying, wow, maybe they could be 2024, maybe, maybe they could be a VP pick. And so I believe that to eliminate a lot of competition, shrewd, pragmatic, Trump took a lot of popular people who were praiseworthy of him and put them in administrative positions. And said, look, you were the governor of state. You could probably handle delegating in this particular administration. You've talked tough on the border. And she did do some good stuff on the border. She just couldn't get rid of the charismatic, couldn't get rid of the charismatic getting me in front of the camera decision here. We'll see if Markwayne Mullin can. Mullen does good interviews. We'll see. I'm not going to promise you, all over here. Now, again, yes, I do say news is stating all over. Yes, Kristi Noem has been made the envoy for the Shield of the Americas. We've talked about that. But the idea that she hasn't been removed for her position or that she's not effectively being fired, Trump is being very kind and gracious and giving her an out. He is. It's a brand new position that Trump made up, which is fine. But pretending that Kristi Noem is not being removed because she didn't tell Senator Kennedy that Trump approved a $220 million ad campaign that featured her and got caught in the lie, or the affair with Corey Lewandowski. Lewandowski has no reason to be in the Department of Homeland Security at all. That according to Mike Howell on the Oversight Project, Tom Homan and other actual competent members of DHS who want to do the law enforcement stuff couldn't actually get things done because Lewandowski wanted to powder his face and do, fun little good time stuff. And that's not effective. DHS requires big actual action for the American people. That's why Trump was voted into office. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe Secretary Noem shouldn't have been sleeping with the dude that was doing a bunch of decision-making in DHS. I mean, hey, maybe, I don't know, maybe honor the marriage you're in. Sorry, I don't care. Just saying. I'm just gonna level with you there. I'm here at a Baptist university. What do you think? I'm gonna ignore the fact that he's in an open marriage doing silly things? President Trump is in multiple marriages, but he's all about Melania. He's married to Melania. He's all about Melania. I'm not seeing him going around doing a bunch of extra stuff, no. But in the middle of an administration that he delegates to, he has a staff member that's busy running around doing special private jet stuff. I'll bet Trump's had a pretty on-point conversation with Kash Patel about some of the jacket stuff before as well. I'm just going to make that particularly clear. So I think the President of the United States, she's not in that marriage anymore. Interesting. Oh, well, still, I put it in your pants while you're busy doing administrative stuff. There's work to do. So that particular side of things, again, trying to be candid as possible with y'all here on the Tony Kinnett cast here, rounding out about an hour of our coverage on this. Of course, the Senate's vote on the War Powers Act resolution stuff. Interesting things. Apparently, Hegseth is currently providing a comment to the Noem removal send-off. We'll get you that kind of information here pretty soon. We have this clip actually from the Daily Signal on this particular matter. On the President of the United States and leading Iran. So the President of the United States announced earlier today that he would like to be involved in okaying the next person who leads Iran. And of course, this put up a couple of concern and questions. So our Daily Signal's George Caldwell asked Secretary of War Pete Hegseth a couple of minutes ago about this. I do want to play this clip for you here. I haven't seen it yet either, so we'll see what he answers.
Yeah, right there.
Secretary Hegseth, the President said earlier today in an interview that he would like to have a say in who's the next leader of Iran. Is this an expansion of your military objective? Do you view it that way? And additionally, you spoke earlier today about how previous leaders have drawn resources from our hemisphere to the Middle East. Mm-hmm. How do you avoid that?
Well, there's no expansion. Ultimately, I think the president's having a heck of a say in who runs Iran, given the ongoing operation we have. So there's no expansion in our objectives. We know exactly what we're trying to achieve. I think today's a great example of what this War Department is capable of doing. I was just in another part of Florida today where we announced, America's counter cartel conference. 18 countries coming together from Central, South America, and the Caribbean, coming together to fight cartels. That is something that is ongoing. We're focused there. We're focused in the Indo-Pacific. We can mass combat power in CENTCOM. EUCOM is able to support that as well. So we know we're laser focused on our hemisphere and our homeland. That's why we locked down the border. That's why we're working with partners to take on cartels. That's why we're sinking drug boats. That's why we're on the offense there. But the beautiful things about combatant commands is that, Brad Cooper's laser focused on Central Command, just like Frank Donovan is laser focused on Southern Command. We can do both. That's what a global power can do. Ultimately, this issue of Iran's nuclear pursuit and their unwillingness through negotiations to stop it was something President Trump has said for a long time needs to be dealt with. And after 47 years, he's doing something that no other president was willing to do. And we're doing it overwhelmingly, and we're doing it decisively, while also in other parts of the globe having the desired effects. I mean, take, for example, what we displayed yesterday, the Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean, sunk by Indo-PACOM, another combatant command, who coordinated with us in order to make that happen. So America's reach is global. Our focus here, though, these missions are narrow, they're scoped, and Admiral Cooper is well on his way to ensuring that we reach those objectives. Right here, yes, sir.
Interesting response from the Secretary of War. It makes sense, of course, the President of the United States, after doing that work, would want to be involved. Yeah, very much makes sense. To answer a question early on with Kristi Noem, no, I mean, she is still in that marriage to Brian since '92. They have 3 kids together, at least according to the most recent data that I have in front of my screen. I'm sure that, again, if that information is different, I'll update it. I did also get a question. So what's going to happen to Mullen's Senate seat? Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt will appoint an interim replacement within 30 days of Mullen's resignation. The appointee must be a Republican and must sign an affidavit promising not to run for the seat in the November 2026 special election. A special election will be held in 2026 to fill the remainder of Mullen's term, which is through January of 2027. The regular 2026 Senate election for the full next term is already scheduled and will proceed separately. So very odd timing, given kind of some of the election stuff, but I think this is genuinely one of those, what are you going to do, style situations. I think there's a lot to that. Hakeem Jeffries, of course, combining his brilliant speaking powers of William Shatner and Barack Obama, Captain Kirk, but you want to stab your own ears with balsa wood spears. Hakeem has an announcement on Noem's being replaced.
Kristi Noem has been fired.
Thank you. That's exciting. Thank you, Hakeem. Boy, I can sure see why you're the minority leader with skills like that.
Consistent with what we have demanded on behalf of the American people.
Oh, yes, that's it. Yeah. Trump was in there like, who is it? It's Hakeem? Give him whatever he wants. I'm sure that's exactly what did it. Oh, okay.
But let me also make clear, a change in personnel is not sufficient. We need a change in policy. And that has to be bold, dramatic, transformational, and meaningful.
I love it. So he gets out the corporate words. It's got to be synergistic. It's got to be altitudinous. It's got to be photosynthesis. It's got to be mean and green. We've got to reuse, reduce, recycle. I do. I enjoy. So he's trying to do a little Chuck Schumering without appearing that he's doing some Chuck Schumering. Stellar, exciting stuff. Thank you so much, Hakeem. Very cool. That's real special, bud. You can talk about that one later to your therapist there in Sunshine. So again, interesting situations all over out of the Markwayne Mullin investigation. Now, there's something else that I wanted to share here. The reaction from Senator Markwayne Mullin, our Virginia Allen, our senior news producer, host of Problematic Women as well over at the Daily Signal, in his full reaction to being nominated as the next Secretary of Homeland Security. He called it, quote, humbling, Mullen told press when asked of his first reaction to the nomination. According to our Virginia Allen, quote, I had to call my dad because it happened quick. I had to call my wife, Mullen added. It's just, pretty humbling when you start thinking about it. A little kid from Westville, Oklahoma gets to serve in the president's cabinet. That's pretty neat, end quote. That's an appropriate response to being appointed to any administration's cabinet. Absolutely agree. I like that, by the way. I like the humbling attitude there. I do appreciate that kind of a thing. Quote, my focus is to keep the homeland secure. That's going to be my focus, and we're super excited about this opportunity. I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating me to lead the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Mullen later wrote on X, quote, I look forward to earning the support of my colleagues in the Senate and carrying out President Trump's mission alongside the department's many capable agencies and the thousands of patriots who keep us safe every day. Very, very decent statement, I would argue, from Senator Markwayne Mullin. Now, Representative Sri Tanadar has, and I'm so sorry that I don't have things set up just quite at the moment. He has tweeted a picture of himself with laser eyes. Hold on. I have to show you guys this. This hurts me, and so it's going to hurt you. I guess in response to Noem being fired, Sri Tanadar, who struggles with wigs, he posted this picture of himself on X a couple moments ago. Now, I don't know if you know this, because of course this man humiliates himself more than just about anything I've ever seen. The laser eyes are not lined up on the eyes, so he looks kind of lopsided and crooked, and that right there will give you a nightmare. Yikes. So good. Democrats are responding as expected. That's real special, sweetie. That's wonderful. This can't be normal for even a second. That's just silly and embarrassing. I love it so much. Guys, if you don't enjoy this timeline, enjoy the timeline anyway. Okay? You don't enjoy this timeline right now. You don't enjoy what's going on here. Enjoy it anywhere. So one question from Fancy On said, look, I think Mark Mullen is great, but how many Senate seats are we willing to risk? Right now, my best assessment, this is what the kids call speculation. I believe that the reason Trump appointed a senator from Oklahoma to the position, Oklahoma has about as much chance of electing a Democrat as Caitlyn Jenner has at actually being a woman. There's no chance at all Oklahoma's about to turn out a Democrat senator. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that Trump is doing this here. So, that said and aside here, one other thing, Tony, did you know that from Rochelle Harris? Oh, Rochelle, we love her. Great friend of the channel here. Did you know that Mullen is an undefeated former MMA fighter as well? I did. I saw that in kind of the report on his particular stuff. I'm not entirely sure what that has to do necessarily. I mean, I hope that, maybe, I don't know, Secretary of Homeland Security, I hope that doesn't come too much into play. Again, Linda McMahon's career in regard to Vince hasn't really played a factor. And I'm going to be honest, I hope that he goes in, calm airline pilot style of stuff here. Yeah. Now, I'm getting some other information here from the rest of the team. Admiral Cooper is also now reporting that the Iranian drone carrier, another Iranian drone carrier they have, is also on fire. So again, the Iranian Navy, their backups, their secondary and tertiary backups are completely destroyed at this point. Here's another little bit of breaking news there's like 4 press conferences going on at once. If I don't go insane, I tell you what, we're on track.
Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And as we speak, it's on fire.
I mean, come on. Again, I refuse to be on kind of the grumpier sides of things, but I do enjoy some of these particular updates and things. Now to be clear, there is one question that's come in that I did want to address. Is Pam Bondi on thin ice? Because as of 22 hours ago, NBC News reported that the Department of Justice shelved the investigation into Biden's auto pen use after it failed to find an applicable criminal statute. Very, very, very unlikely that it is Bondi who is, I mean, I don't think that one would be Pam Bondi or Jeanine Pirro's fault. This would likely stem from the understanding that some DC grand jury, which sits for months, would not bring any kind of indictment here sought by the DOJ. Now, again, there are rumors that activist groups in DC have been coached, potential grand jury members about how to issue no true indictments of any sort brought by the Trump administration. There's a lot of things to dig into here. I'm not sure what Pam Bondi is doing regarding looking into perhaps rigged grand juries or, again, indictments being brought forward, certain levels and crimes that are being committed. I'm not sure. It is very true, though, that the President of the United States might, it's very true that the United States very much might go, that the President of the United States might can Bondi over that, though. I think that she is, again, overpromised and underdelivered quite a bit. So to be clear, Kristi Noem's problem, let's talk about kind of the summation here, because I've gone on for quite a while. And to be fair, I pretty soon have to actually go and speak here at my alma mater in a speech this evening. That we'll have to get to you guys in kind of a recording a little bit later. To be clear in kind of summary, Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, came in, did a lot of things great, then had a lot of PR boo-boos in which she said a lot of things that embarrassed the administration and made things a little more difficult. For her use of Corey Lewandowski and the obfuscation of data and the release of, again, Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski have blocked the release of deportation numbers to the American people. This has been a sore point from the White House to the Department of Homeland Security. We do not know currently the true number of deportations that have occurred month by month in the Trump administration, especially as quickly as prior administrations have released those numbers. That's a problem. Then she said under oath that Trump okayed a $220 million ad campaign that featured her and went to a specialty group. And so the Trump team, very nicely, very kindly, gave her a send-off by saying, you can go be the envoy to the Special American Shield, essentially Monroe Doctrine organization that he was announcing. It was a very kind and gracious way of removing someone who has kind of made his administration more difficult for the American people in some regions of the country over the last month and a half in the response to situations. Senator Markwayne Mullin, that's who Trump wants to replace Kristi Noem with. We'll see how that goes. Now, on Pam Bondi's side, Pam Bondi is on thin ice because where Pam Bondi maybe hasn't come out and done as much of the embarrassing the administration stuff, she's also promised a lot of things and then underdelivered. The president isn't pleased about. Now, she could be removed by the end of today, probably unlikely at this point, by the end of the week, before midterms, maybe just after midterm. Originally, I had guessed, if I had to throw out a fine, guess out into the mists of the ether, the same kind of guess, mind you, in which I predicted that Noem was about to be replaced rather soon. At least back in January of this year is when I said, yeah, her time's, it's on the clock. No, I think that for Bondi, Trump is probably more cause than not to perhaps wait until after the midterms. I have no idea or speculation on who might replace Bondi at all. I'm not going to even wager a guess. I've heard Jeanine Pirro. I'm not going to get out there and say, oh yeah, I totally or don't think that's going to be a thing. No, I'm not going to do that. But right now, I do believe, based on several individuals' kind of inside sources and things, one of these situations where right now the Trump administration's cleaning house. They want to get everybody on board. Don't embarrass the administration. Deliver for the American people. Don't make bad calls for no reason out of nowhere. That seems to be his goal. I don't really see anything suggesting that Markwayne Mullin's not going to be able to accomplish that. We'll have to see. We're going to get some confirmation hearings now. Now, the real question is, what is this going to do regarding the schedule for the Senate? Because John Thune is still under a lot of pressure to bring forth the Save America Act. So is this going to get shunted off to the side while we deal with the Mullen confirmation hearings? Probably. That's not going to make a lot of Republicans happy, nor should they be. Save America Act should have been incorporated into the talking filibuster rule change that should be moving forward yesterday. We're not there. So that's going to be a problem. Secretary Hegseth is also pushing back right now on a claim that an F-15 was shot down in Iraq. He is pushing back against this claim that the Iranians have somehow shot down, or Iraqis have somehow shot down, a U.S. or Israeli F-15. Here you go.
As CENTCOM pointed out, that those reports of an F-15 being shot down are false. As you can imagine, Iran is doing everything it can to peddle in lies, deception, and inflation of numbers and reality, mostly to propagandize to their own people.
Yeah, I mean, true. At this point, Iran has claimed that they have slayed the entire United States military twice. So, silly, nonsensical, good times. A really good hoot, I would say, looking at how the particulars of propaganda are playing out in any given war, but especially here with Iran's very discordant, struggling administration, just telling everyone everything's fine as everything burns down around them. Now, the president did send the president has sent forward a couple of big movements in the administration. The president has sent forward a couple of new instituted policies regarding allies, as well as some economic and energy policies in the administration. I'm probably not going to dive into those too much right here, right now. Another small piece here, Italy is sending its military capabilities to the Persian Gulf. That's from Prime Minister Meloni. The president has also once again called on the IRGC to lay down all of their arms, essentially stop it. Hear from the President of the United States. In order, you want to stop the strikes, that's what you got to do. Here's this from the President of the United States today, again, monitoring 3 concurrent press conferences.
I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military, and the police to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. And I don't want to see that. They don't want to see it either. We also urge Iranian diplomats around the world to request asylum and to help us shape a new and better Iran with great potential. It's a country with great potential, as much better future for Iran. It's now beginning. It's going to be, I think, a great future. And the United States will ensure that whoever leads the country next, Iran will not threaten America or its neighbors, Israel, anybody.
And then last but certainly not least, I promised you Hegseth's statement on Secretary Noem to kind of round things off from the third out of three press conferences that we're currently digging into. Here is here is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on the Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem.
Mr. Secretary, one more question.
Sure.
What is your message to Americans who are concerned about security here at home with the change-up that we're going to see at the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, I think Kristi Noem did an excellent job over there securing our border and keeping us focused on threats, and President making a change. We all serve at the pleasure of the President. I'm sure Markwayne Mullin will do a fantastic job. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. But Kristi did a great job setting us up for success. So I don't have any concerns about whether or not the Homeland will be covered down on.
Good answer. Good answer. Straight, forward, not jumping ahead of the President on anything. We serve at the pleasure of the President. He gets to make the calls. Yep, that's how executive agencies work. Correct? Absolutely. So again, tonight I'm not going to turn around and introduce another show at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Not my plan. I have a speech to give here at Maranatha Baptist University in Wisconsin. Again, I'm doing this little show out of an abandoned classroom here this afternoon, breaking this news. Really glad to have you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. There's a link in the description to the show's Discord if you want to hang out with us there. Other than that, we'd appreciate if you like the show. Throw a like and a subscribe. Tell us where you're joining us from. We would appreciate that as well. That said, we will see you guys real soon. Tomorrow, have a great interview to share with you. This is on immigration and essentially how we begin deciding after the illegal immigrants in the country and the deportations take place. How do we decide new immigration and where does that go? Who decides that? What are the factors that file in? It's a pretty good thing here with some of the people who are going to be bringing that about in the next couple of decades in the United States. That all said, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.